Hello and welcome. Today we've got Robert Jardine and we will be discussing what causes all the diseases. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to my Telegram channel and to nicholasveniamin.com for my free email updates. And if you're watching this for the first time on YouTube, I will leave the link below in the description for the full interview due to the censorship. Robert, thank you for joining me. And how are you? And where do we begin?
Well, great, Nicholas. I'm good. I'm good, and I'd like just to begin with my chosen topic tonight, which is basically the true cause of every disease that you can find in a medical dictionary. And that's a very big statement, but I'm going to attempt to back that up with some good explanations and leave you with some references to go further on. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is the underlying cause which triggers our bodies to create a symptom, and this symptom might be called any disease. It might be called tinnitus. It might be called cancer. It might be called schizophrenia. It might be called Crohn's disease. Right? They're all what I would class as diseases, but my talk is really the underlying cause, because it's a common thing which causes and controls all of these conditions, including what we currently know as viral conditions. So it comes from the work of a German doctor. His name was Dr. Reiki Gerd Hammer. He died in 2017, I believe. And he discovered through personal experience, because he contracted cancer after his son was shot and died. His son had quite a protracted death. When he eventually died, his dad contracted cancer, and he thought, was there a connection? Because his dad had been a rather healthy guy. So Dr. Hammer then started investigating that, and through his investigations, he has uncovered underlying causes which cause our body or control our body to create symptoms. So these causes have been sort of summarized into 5 very simple biological laws which apply to every disease in every person every time, and it is verifiable in every case. Okay, which is an awfully big statement to me, but I believe it to be true. Okay, so the first biological law which he discovered is that every disease, or we'll call them a biological program, is initiated by a shock, an emotional shock, which we were unprepared for, and we were consciously unable to manage that shock situation, Nicholas, okay? What happens is our biological brain, which is not our unconscious, it's a thing called our psyche. This brain sits ever present, monitoring our environment in case we're in danger in some way. And it's below or beyond or above our conscious awareness. It's there, and it's there monitoring all of the time, 24/7. Now, when we have a shock that bypasses the conscious mind, the psyche latches onto that shock and starts a biological adaptive process in the body, which in the split of a second, because it makes this decision instantaneously, in the split of a second, okay, the psyche tries to adapt the body in some way to help us overcome that shock, because its purpose is to keep us alive, so life can continue on Earth, right? So the psyche catches a shock, it starts a biological program, and that biological program then becomes latched onto the shock issue. So let's say the shock happens. Let's say you get a message saying your company's just gone bankrupt, or your son has fallen off his motorcycle and he was doing 110, right? Okay, big shock, okay? In that instant, your psyche latches onto that shock, okay? And then it tracks that shock. So your biological brain is then latched onto that shock, and it starts to adapt the body, right? So depending on which part of the brain is involved, depends on which part of the body gets involved. So it could cause eczema. Okay, so that's a part of the brain called the cortex. Okay,
Mhm.
but it could cause heart disease. That's a different part of the brain. It could cause Crohn's disease. That's in the digestive system, right? But either way, the psyche has latched the brain onto both the life issue and the biological adaptation in the body. Okay. Now, think about it. It's quite common sense. Yeah, the body's trying to help you. Thing is, the body was programmed 50 million years ago. So it can't really cope and adapt to Facebook and the BBC News or CNN News, whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's still a primitive thing. This psyche, this kind of like the thing that's guarding our health, is constantly monitoring the environment. It can misunderstand things. It can believe things it reads on the news and become shocked by them. Okay. So what happens is, anyway, we have a shock. The body then, or the psyche, latches the brain and the issue and the body together. So they form like three things connected. So your body then follows the issue. So let's say it locked it onto, and you end up with Crohn's disease. Then your Crohn's disease is directly being controlled by that life issue. It's being caused by that life issue, if you like. And if the life issue gets worse, the Crohn's disease will flare up. And if it gets better, it goes away.
Right.
But this process is the same for every disease. Okay, so that's the first biological. It's not all of the law, but it's all I'm going to discuss tonight because of time limitations. But every disease outside of physical injury or severe poisoning or malnutrition, outside those three things only, everything else it accounts for. No, even things like a deformed spine. You think, well, it's genetic. No, it's not genetic. It's actually being controlled by part of the brain, which is deforming the spine. And the brain is adapting to a perceived issue, and it's causing the spinal deformation as the spine grows. Okay, so that's the first. Basically, that's the first biological law. Everything starts with a shock. When we latch onto that shock, the body is then kind of connected to the issue, and it's modifying the body and causing a symptom. Okay, simple, dead simple. So the next law is the law of the two phases, and what that means is that if this shock that the psyche is latched onto, if that shock becomes resolved, the body then goes into a healing phase where it tries to undo all of the adaptations or the adaptations that it was doing when the conflict was unresolved. So let's say your son's fallen off his motorbike, for example, okay? Is in critical. You're like, oh my God, you're full on, right? Your body, your body will latch onto that, and it'll be creating some symptom in you. Okay.
Right. So,
for example,
is it a little bit like someone going through a divorce or losing a loved one or losing a job, and you fall into this depression, maybe, is that the kind of shock we're speaking of, and then it affects you?
It can cause a depression, but I'm talking about an unexpected situation appears in your life, bang, and you were not prepared for it. So instead of kind of thinking your way through it, your biological brain latches onto it, right? And it triggers your body. Let's say it causes, it can cause all heart diseases caused by it, for example, right? So let's say a territorial loss. Territorial loss causes a thing called angina. Now, what happens is the body latches onto that shock, that issue. And let's say it's your company's going bust or something. You feel you're going to lose your company. There's a divorce case, right? And you're getting taken to the cleaners and you're going to lose everything, right? Right. So your body might latch onto that. And then when, for example, the heart attack, what's it, the coronary artery related heart attack there, when the body is latched onto that shock, the lining of the coronary artery is becoming wider to help you pump more blood to the heart muscle itself, to help you fight like a stag or like a prehistoric man, to help you fight to regain back your territory. So it's like a short-term adaptive process which goes on in that case, okay, where the coronary artery is getting adapted because you're going bankrupt, say, or right, you think you are, or the divorce case, for example, right? So when that becomes resolved, let's say you get a settlement and you're quite happy with that settlement. You say, all right, okay, fair enough. That's it all over and done with. Then the body goes into a situation where it tries to resolve or to try to repair all of the adaptations it was doing when you were conflict active. Because when you're conflict active, your body's running on 24/7. It's frantically trying to get you to modify your body so that you can fight to get your territory back, for example. Okay. So when the territory's back, the body goes into healing. At a point midway through that healing curve, you have a heart attack, because this is what causes it. The brain, the relay in the brain goes through a process where it squeezes out some fluid, which is part of the process, and it causes the part of the brain which controls the heart, it causes it to go out of sync. It causes it to have a heart attack. Basically, it causes a coronary artery related heart attack. So that's that's an unfortunate reality, but that's the way it is. In nature, these conflicts are resolved in a couple of days. If like I said on Charlie's show, if I live up where the stags are in the hills, right? If a big stag, he's got all his women, if he gets booted out by a young stag, he will wait 2 or 3 days and then come charging back in to try and get his women back. Now, if he achieves it, okay, his heart attack will be nothing because it's only 4 or 5 days long. But if that stag was waiting, say, 2 years or 9 months, and then came charging back in, he would get his women back, but then a week later, 2 weeks later, he'd have a heart attack and it may well kill him because he was in conflict activity too long. Well, that's what happens with us humans. We're in conflict activity too long because of the legal system, whatever, life, So when we resolve it, the healing crisis, right, which is called the epileptoid or epileptic crisis in German medicine, can actually be fatal, which is an unfortunate thing. But it's just the way the body, it's the reality of what the body is that we have, right? But so the second law that he discovered is there's 2 phases. There's the first phase when the conflict is active and the body is creating a symptom, an adaptation. And then when the issue becomes resolved, the body then goes through some kind of healing where we get symptoms like chesty cough, like phlegm, like a drippy nose, like itchy eyes, like a rash on the skin, like an attack of diarrhea when you've got IBS, right? These all belong in the second part of this 2-phase program. So that's quite amazing that all of these things are actually controlled by the brain as the brain is responding to a life issue, right? And I really mean every disease, arthritis, right? Schizophrenia, eating disorders, all cancers, all conditions of the body, right, and mind, right? And this doctor, Dr. Hammer, he was able to plot which part of the brain and photograph it using CC technology, right? You can actually photograph it happen in real time, and he's done that. So you can actually look at a brain scan and say, this poor guy, he's got paranoid schizophrenia. Now, he's going to have to do this and then that. If he wants to stop this, he's going to have to fix that. If he can fix that issue, the paranoid schizophrenia will stop itself, right? Or the guy might have, anything. He might have herpes. See, we're told herpes is a virus, right? But I've sent you some pictures, Stacey, which I wish I could get them on the screen. I've got a picture of a guy with herpes. It's on one half of his tongue and not the other.
I think I've got it actually, because I do remember seeing an email with that. Let me just have a look. You send it to my. Let me have a look. Oh God, I've got all of these emails. Yeah, it's. I've got. I'm just. It just gets lost.
No. Yeah, totally. Well, there's a picture of this guy, right? He's got one half his tongue is covered with this. I think it was herpes, right? Another half's not.
Right.
Now, it's kind of ridiculous to think that virus, which has never been found, can actually just affect one particular nerve and not affect the whole body, right? But what is seen from the brain scans is you can actually see that process being controlled by the brain for its own for its own logic, if you like. It's biological logic, which is prehistoric.
Right.
So anyway, just to get back on track, if you find that picture, it's great, right? But it's okay.
I'm looking as you're speaking.
Yeah. So the next biological law, Nick, is that, or Nicholas, sorry, is that
okay.
It's called the ontogenetic system of cancer and cancer equivalent diseases. What really that means? Well, what it actually means is that the brain can be divided up into 4 developmental areas. There's the prehistoric brain, which is the brainstem, and this little bit at the back called the cerebellum. Then we have the cerebral medulla, which is the new brain, but inside this wriggly bit on top that you see that looks like a big pudding. But inside there, the white matter is called the medulla, right? And that is that's a new separate part of the brain. And then we've got the cortex. So we've got these 3 or 4 areas of the brain, right? Now, each area of the brain controls a whole separate side of the body. So anything to do with the digestive system is controlled by the brainstem. So if anybody comes with Crohn's or ulcerative colitis or IBS or polyps or bowel cancer or cancer of the throat, right? That's going to be, if you do a brain scan, you can see that in the brainstem every time, every single time, without any exception.
Robert, can I ask you something?
Whereas if
if you're happy and you're positive and you've got positive thoughts, would that prevent those shocks that you're talking about?
No, they don't. They kind of maybe prevent you a little bit, but these shocks that catch us on the wrong foot, they are the unexpected. If we're lucky enough to be prepared, they will not cause disease, right? But it's like the disease has told you that you were unprepared at that moment, and your biological brain had to step in to help you. That's what it means, Nicholas. Okay? So the disease or the symptom is proof that your conscious mind was not able to absorb the shock, and the biological brain had to do its last ditch attempt at saving the day, and it just did something. And how it perceived the shock is what determines what it does. So the person that lost his company, he ends up getting the condition which affects his heart. The woman who lost her boyfriend because she found him going out with somebody else, and it really made her angry, right? That could affect her digestive system. She ends up with Crohn's. Okay, so but the disease or the symptom is proof that the conscious mind was bypassed and the biological brain was activated. Okay. Right. And the place in which the biological brain, it exists within all our brain, whichever place was activated by the shock determines exactly what symptom appears. So that's how Dr. Hammer could look at a brain scan and say, oh, you've got a stomach ulcer. He could know that just by looking at a brain scan. He didn't even need to meet the person.
Wow.
Amazing, isn't it? Yeah. And he was also able to say that person suffered an anger. That person suffered an anger with a territorial anger that caused that. And he's also able to say, if that chap resolves that conflict in real life, okay, this is what's going to happen. That ulcer is going to, in so many weeks, it's going to go to this, and in 2 weeks after that, it's going to be gone altogether, or something like that. Okay, you're able to predict exactly what's going to happen. Dr. Ham was able to say, right, to a guy, okay, you fix that issue, you're going to have a heart attack about 2.5 weeks later, but you're going to survive that heart attack.
Wow.
Because you can actually tell that by looking at the brain scan and by taking a client history. You can tell, as long as the issue hasn't been going on for too long, like I said about the stag, okay, as long as the issue's not been going on for too long, determines how traumatic the healing crisis is.
Right. That's why they have a heart attack after the situation, not during.
Exactly. And that's why they always have a heart attack at rest. You notice that almost all heart attacks happen when you're sitting lying at home relaxing in the TV at night. Now, if it was caused by constriction of the arteries, heart attacks would only ever happen when you're at maximum physical exertion. Right. It's just common sense, isn't it? But it just never happens that way. The heart attack whole thing starts at night time or in the evening when you're at rest, or definitely when you're not at full exertion. So that again that comes from what he says. So I've just basically outlined the first law, which was that everything starts with a shock. The second law is that it starts a process that it's got two halves, provided you resolve the issue. The third law was that the part of the brain that gets affected determines what symptom you present as a disease. Okay. And the fourth law is that all the microbes within the body are being controlled by the psyche, so that if you get a so-called infection, let's say a bacterial infection, that is always controlled by the brain, really, which is being activated by the shock. Mm-hmm. So, and those microbes, they could be fungi or bacteria, those microbes are always there to rebuild the tissue or to remove excess tissue, depending on which part of the brain is involved. So, for example, the man with bowel cancer, right? When he resolves his issue, this is what Dr. Hammer found, and this is just information out there for people's interest. I'm not pretending that I can cure cancer, and definitely not saying that. But what I'm saying is this is what his research shows. So when the man with the bowel cancer resolves the issue, mm-hmm. his body then, his psyche, through this brain relay, controls the activity of tubercular bacteria, and they actively remove that cancer ASAP. That's what they do every time. And Dr. Hammer, he was an internist in a cancer research hospital, and when he cottoned on to what was causing it, and when he was treating people, I mean, he was treating terminally ill people, right? They had a life expectancy, a 5-year survival window, it's called, of under 10%. So under 10% of these was expected to still be alive 5 years later. When they confiscated his records and looked at and followed up on all his clients, and there was hundreds of them, he was, I believe he was well over 80% effective at completely curing them. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Now that's a big difference from 10%. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So
yeah.
It's just a new understanding of how the body works, which is provable and proven in every case. So basically, we've got 4 laws there. We've got the shock, we've got the 2 phases, we've got the different parts of the brain control different parts of the body, and we've got the different parts of the brain control the different microbes. And the last law that he discovered is called the quintessence. And it really means, what that means is that every disease, right, and this is going to be hard to believe, but I swear it's true, Nicholas, right? Every disease is part of a biological program which is trying to help you stay alive. Either you individually or you as part of a family, but it's trying to help you. Now that's, if you've got breast cancer, you're not thinking, well, how the heck is that trying to help me? Because it's like a death sentence for some people, okay? But the biological reason for that breast cancer, if it's a glandular breast cancer, is because that woman has suffered a shock. Let's say it was her son that fell off the motorbike. Let's just say that, right? Then her body wants to create more breast tissue so she can nurture her stricken child, get him back to health. Even though the woman might be 50 or 60 and long past having children and looking breastfeeding them, right? The guy's old enough to drive a motorbike. It doesn't matter. The biological brain does that reaction. So it creates more breast tissue. It's called, it could be called, well, it's called breast cancer by medicine. But the biological body must save my son, must nourish him. He needs nourished. Mm-hmm. When the son makes it a full recovery, or the woman somehow changes her perspective on it and kind of frees herself from that. When I said the psyche latches onto the issue, so it's like the woman's got to somehow unlatch the psyche from the issue. And as soon as she does that, the body then starts to reverse it. When it does that, it uses bacteria to remove that breast tumor. And it looks pretty gruesome, but it's nature's way of doing it. And it happens a lot. I grew up on a sheep farm, and we used to get sheep that would have a septic udder. One udder would go completely septic and drop off. Mm-hmm. And now I know why it was, because that sheep had lost one of its lambs. And, when it resolved that, when it got into resolution, the breast cancer was removed by tubercular bacteria. So it all makes sense when you understand disease from the perspective of the biological brain. And it's just amazing. It's amazing, this understanding. It's truly amazing, because no matter what your problem is, you can start thinking about it like this. You could start, I've given websites and that for people, okay? You can go on there. There's one called free-new-medicine.com. That's the most incredible website where you can actually download all this information for free and just leave a donation. And I ask people to leave a very good donation, because that book is priceless. And you can actually figure out why your body has created whatever condition is that you're trying to get over. And it'll tell you. And it gives you a potential then. It's like having a compass when you're lost in the forest. You get an illness, you get a diagnosis, and it's a great big word, and you don't know what it means, and the doctor's saying this and they're saying that, and you're just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. But when you learn the 5 laws, right, it's like getting a compass. You suddenly know what's wrong, what caused it. And if you fix it, you know what's going to happen.
Right.
Right. And then your project is to resolve the issue. You know what I mean? And then manage the repair process. And I spoke, one of my clients was a doctor of psychology. We'll call him David, right? Just for a name, right? So David, doctor of psychology, okay? He had tinnitus, and it didn't know what to do about it. There's nothing you can do about tinnitus. It's this ringing, buzzing, horrible noise in the ear that never goes away. So on our second session, by the time we had 2 sessions, we had figured out what the trauma was that had caused it. And we did like a meditation, a relaxation, and we were able to go back through that trauma and release the emotional content of that trauma, to be able to kind of to release it, because the psyche had latched into the issue, even though it was like some 8 or 10 years. It had it for 8 or 10 years. The psyche is still going round and round and round in its little loop, making the issue, right? So when the emotional release was achieved, okay, 10 years of tinnitus just went like that, gone. And it's incurable, apparently.
Wow. So how can we prevent from all of these diseases occurring from the shock?
Right. Well, you can know, right. For example, you can know some facts, some pretty secure facts. That viruses don't actually exist, right? That they are peptide chains created by the brain. and that it's assumed that there's some organism doing that, but that's just an assumption. It's called a hypothesis. A hypothesis is something that has actually not been proven. It's basically proven itself to be suggested, but never been able to be proven to be true. So that's what. So if we understand that, like, say, chest congestion, which is obviously a big issue at the moment, right? Chest congestion is caused by a specific type of shock. It's called a territorial fear, right? It's made worse by abandonment or isolation, which, whether we self-isolate or whether we forcibly isolate, it doesn't matter. The biological brain still gets affected. These two things together create severe breathing difficulties and chest congestion. Now, if you know that, and you know that it's these two kind of emotional reactions which the psyche latches onto, or the psyche causes as it latches onto the issue, you start to see life differently, Nicholas. You start to think, well, hold on, I don't know if I believe that. And, you know, I mean, you don't get so worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that in itself protects us, okay? But the power within this new understanding is that when we do have the symptom, it takes the confusion and it gives us direction. You know why you get the tinnitus. You know why you get the rheumatoid arthritis, right? You know why you get whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. It really doesn't matter. You can figure out why your body's created it. And if you can think, all right, when did it start? So therefore, the thing that created it must be about then. So it gives you a playing field to work within to facilitate your own health, or for somebody can help you get your health back. Right? So it can't really stop you. It's like how do you stop having an unexpected shock? You can't really do that.
Okay, yeah. So
the definition of an
So you said it. So you said like a shock would mean that it would bypass the conscious mind and it would just attack the biological brain. Okay. So what if you're a very strong character, and naturally, it takes a lot for you to get shocked, or even to be impressed or surprised, okay, with things, because you've seen a lot, you're experienced, you know, you've mentally prepared yourself that X, Y, Z can happen in your life, and you're really good at dealing with you know, with trauma, or good at dealing with situations. You know, that can be quite depressing. So would that mean that a person with those qualities would have a reduced you know, would it be unlikely for that person to experience illness then?
Very much so. And Dr. Hammer himself was one of those people. He was a big, strong guy, extraordinarily intelligent guy. He's got three or four patents which are still used in medicine today, right? And he had never been ill in his life, right, until his son died in his arms. Now you can imagine what that felt like.
Absolutely.
No matter how strong you are, no matter how strong you are, that's going to get you, isn't it?
Of course.
Right?
In your arms or your son.
Within months, he had testicular cancer. Okay? Right. And that was the start of his journey of learning, you see. So it can happen to us all. But we can easily worry ourselves into, we can sometimes we can be so self-judgmental, we speed up the aging process. I'm actually going to do a show on Charlie Ward's show in about a month's time, and just give people some tips on how to kind of stop speeding up the aging process. Because that's the fundamental driving emotion behind that is self-devaluation. And it affects the tissues of the body, causes fibrosis, it causes, arthritis, it causes these types of conditions, okay? So it's definitely when you learn the 5 laws, it becomes like a survival kit.
Right.
Yeah. It's like a compass, and when a wee thing to it's like in a little Boy Scouts little survival set, okay, there's going to be big stuff that you might need help with, but at least you've got a compass. At least you know what will be going on in your body. Yeah.
Right.
So that's how. So what you said, Nicholas, about big strong guys. Yeah, big strong guys. They don't get ill as much. But Dr. Hammer was one of those guys, and that is actually what started this whole learning journey off. His son died after a protracted fight to save his life. His son died in his arms. 2 months later, testicular cancer.
Right.
And that was the start of the journey. Okay, that was it. Luckily, he was able to get the testicle removed, and it was, it was that kind of but it left the question in his mind: did the trauma? So what he did was, when he went back to his work, which was trying to discover what causes cancer, he questioned all his clients in huge detail, and lo and behold, every single time there was an issue, and it was still going on. Every time. And then he thought, right, let's do the brain scans. And he could see it. Then all of a sudden, after he'd got about 1,000 brain scans, he thought, my God, there's that shadow in every single one. Every single woman that's got that cancer has got that shadow. Gee whiz, what's going on? And then when I get her to resolve that conflict, we do therapy, or she goes and, whatever she does to resolve it, guess what? The shadow changes every time, every single time. And that's how he was able to plot the whole brain out. Every time. And everybody knows somebody who's got some disease. In fact, I don't think you'd probably be hard pushed to know somebody, man. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. No, it's amazing how the body works and how we've been lied to, because the elites must know all of this. And
I'm not going there, because I think that's a dangerous way to go. But it's interesting, right? And Dr. Hammer, actually, on his website, which is still up there, he actually thinks that he actually made that claim back in 2016 or 15, saying that they are using his knowledge in a backwards way. So they're using his knowledge to create fear, to create the symptoms of chest infection, chest congestion, territorial fear, and isolation. If you think those two issues are what Dr. Hammer discovered causes it's asthma type, so congestive type symptoms. Okay, if you create enough territorial fear and create enough isolation, you create enough symptom.
Is that why they tell us, you get bad chest? The symptoms is that you get bad chest pains.
I dare say I've got no idea why they say. I don't know why. I'm not going to go into that. But have you ever thought about this? Right. A lot of people, more than average people, get ill when they go on holiday or when they have the break.
Right.
Now, understanding German medicine, you can see exactly why that is, because you've suddenly left the stress. It might have been work or home, right? And the body goes into temporarily, relax. And then you enter the second phase of the issue, which I said was the healing phase, where you get the symptoms. You get this night sweat, so you get the sore throat, you get the flu, you get, whatever.
So Robert, what if you started getting over the trauma very, very gradually, and it wasn't just straight away, and so it was so gradually?
Fabulous question. Well done for asking that question, Nicholas. Right, well done. Right, it seems that the safest way, if it's a big conflict, there are basically only a few conflicts which are dangerous to solve, right? And these conflicts are, what you can do is just downgrade them and live with them. You go like some kind of partial resolution to the issue, right? And you just the symptoms reduce and you just live with them. So as let's say for example, the issue which is driving a bowel cancer. Bowel cancer is an adenocarcinoma. So it's adenocells which are controlled from the brainstem. It's a morsel or a chunk conflict, they call it, right? So it's like in an animal kingdom, it's something that they can't digest. So let's say a wolf, it jumps on a sheep, eats the sheep, right? And a big lump of bone gets stuck in the wolf's stomach, right? That wolf's stomach or its bowels, right, will start to proliferate cells And these cells will secrete more enzymes and gastric juices to digest that stuck thing, to allow the wolf to pass it. So it will help the wolf. But with us, where was I going with that? So with us, right, it's not a physical chunk that sticks in our gut, but it's like the divorce settlement, or there's something else. There's something that really gets us, right? The body's trying to digest it, so it just does the same thing. Tries to create more gastric juices by creating more adeno cells, right? It gets called cancer. But if you kind of move away from that issue, the cancer stops growing, but it just sits there. It just becomes like dormant. Then if you go back into the issue, it starts to grow again. If you resolve the issue, which is different than moving away from it, okay? If you resolve it, the brain really changes instantly, bang. And the thing then goes through a pre-programmed healing system where it uses, in this case, it uses tubercular bacteria to remove the adenocarcinoma, as according to what Dr. Hammer discovered, okay? So what can you do? Well, you can move away from situations to downgrade them. But, most conditions are quite safe to heal, almost all. So what you do is you figure out what's caused it and you resolve it. And another thing, Nicholas, which is really quite amazing to see with people, is that really heartfelt grumps and gripes that people hold on to don't realize them giving them the stomach ulcer. When they realize that issue is giving them the stomach ulcer and the stomach is really, really ruining their life, it's much easier to change your perspective on the issue.
Right.
Do you know that? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It becomes, changing perspectives.
It's all about,
is a great way.
If you think about it, boils down to the power of your thoughts.
Yeah, but it's your psyche, you see. If you can use your thoughts in such a way that resolves the issue for the psyche, you go into healing. You can't just say to yourself, you can't just tell your psyche, oh, listen, I'm no longer worried about that issue anymore, because it's independent of your mind. What you have to do is you use your thoughts to change the situation. You use that to resolve the issue, and then your psyche picks up that the issue is now resolved, and it goes into healing.
So you're saying that.
But
So you're saying, although it's independent, you could say that you could think positively to make better decisions to resolve the situation.
Well, you can think positive. What I'm saying specifically is that what you do is you resolve the situation and the psyche picks up on that and it goes into healing.
Right.
Right. And part of resolving the situation, if you do it through therapy, part of that is to understand what's causing the symptom, and then the person goes out and resolves the symptom. But it's always the practical resolution of the problem is the most consistent way to start a natural healing happening in the body, no matter what. So Dr. Hammer himself, he would go to any lengths. He would literally take somebody by the hand and pull them out of his office and say, right, we're getting in the car, we're going to go and sort this out right now. And he would take them and sort the issue out with their family. Have a family meeting. That's it. Let's get this done.
Right.
And that was it. Thanks. And then that person's psyche then picked up on that, and lo and behold, he ends up healing 90% of his clients that only 10% should be live with. You know what I mean? That was his method. Is practical resolution.
So that's the solution to resolve, to not walk away from the problems and face them and resolve them.
To try and find a practical resolution always starts to reverse the biological process.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, for example, if you've got severe congestion, right, in the lungs, according to what Dr. Hammer has discovered, which has been verified 100%, okay, it would be, all right, well, firstly, get rid of the isolation. So it would be like, get back within your pack, get the old lady out of the home and into the family, right? And then realize that the virus theory is only a theory, and what is now being proven that all these symptoms that they think are caused by viruses, when you look at the brain scans, you can actually see them all being caused in the brain scans by stresses in life. So I don't really need to prove whether viruses exist or not, because there's no conditions which are not caused by the brain. The flu is caused by the brain, according to the scans. So I don't, I can argue till the cows come home whether viruses exist or not, and whether it's objective, subjective, whether it's passes the Cox 5 postulates or as modified by Rivers postulates. It doesn't matter, because what are they talking about? Herpes, cold sores? It's a separation conflict. And you can see it in the brain. And if you resolve the conflict, you resolve the cold sores. So viruses are just... not really a thing to...
A doctor said to me as well that viruses don't transmit, and he said exactly what you're saying, and it's very interesting, It
is, but the brain scans, you see, Dr. Hammer's work, he's been able to tie up the brain scan, the area of the brain, the life issue, and the symptom, and how the body controls the microbes. Everything, you see, it's all, and what it turns out to be is that your body's only trying to help you. And using antibiotics, when you think of it under that light, you think, that's not very... For example, if what Dr. Hammer discovered was, if somebody's body was trying to remove a cancer, let's say a lung cancer, okay, so an alveolar lung cancer, it's the most common secondary. Now, there's a reason why that is a secondary. I'll come to that. But when the body tries to remove it, it uses tubercular bacteria. Mm-hmm. And that's what tuberculosis is. Right?
Right.
So if you take antibiotics, you can stop it, fair enough, but you just get left with a little polyp of cancer in there. It's no big deal. It'll not do any harm, but that's all happen. If you allow it to continue, it will remove that little polyp of cancer. And this puts a new understanding on why tuberculosis, there was a massive outbreak after the First World War. Mm-hmm. Because how many people were living under the threat of death? Either personally or their son was in the army. Do you know what I mean? It's everyone was affected. So then when peace was declared, the stress peels off. Everyone goes into healing. The bacteria go mad, trying to get rid of all these polyps and bacteria, these tubercular bacteria, they are fueled by protein. Now, if you're not eating copious amounts of meat, right, they will scavenge that protein from your own organs, and that's what was killing people. They were dying of cachexia. It's called. It's a condition where you waste away. Right? Mm-hmm. It's the body's kind of devouring itself to fuel the bacteria to remove the cancer, which was caused by the death fright, which is now gone into resolution.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense, yeah.
And when you understand it that way, it just makes beautiful sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So therefore, you would say, oh, right. If I've got a big bacterial, it means, well, if somebody says you've got a big bacterial infection, it means, oh, well, that's good because I'm overcoming something because it's a healing phase. And B, well, I better just, allow it to do its job. Maybe need to control it, because if it gets too much, you might need to take small amounts of antibiotics. I don't know. As I say, I'm not a doctor, so I'm just putting this forward as what I might do if I was in that situation, right? And you can manage it with the knowledge. Wow. Yeah. So it's such a mind change, because I look at the internet just now. Obviously, everyone's glued to the internet for what's going to happen. There's big stuff going on in the world, as we all know, right? As we all know. And when you understand the bylaws, my God, it's like a compass. You just know what's rubbish and what's true. You can just go, nah, delete. Oh yeah, maybe delete. That's rubbish. No matter whether it's a good side or a bad side. You know what I mean? You can just think that. you're able to know enough that it protects you. And therefore, you can make decisions about rolling your sleeve up for the procedure, right? Because you can think, well, it makes you think differently about this issue.
Well, a lot of doctors and medical professionals are leaving the medical industry and wanting to create their own medical system, if you like. So it's great information that you've given us. Probably there are many doctors out there who don't know this, so they could look into it with the brain and the things that you've given me and the links that I will be putting below of this video. It's a great thing. No, Robert, I just wanted to say thank you very much. It's been an absolute honor to have you. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers before we finish?
I would. I've got a website which is up it's going to be put up, robert-jardine.com. Right? And I'm very soon, I'm going to be starting a Zoom, so an open Zoom meeting, maybe twice a month, where I just discuss the 5 laws. And then I could be, if anybody's interested in knowing more or seeing if this information can maybe help them, they could come onto that Zoom meeting and just type in a question and get answers, direct. So that's going to be happening soon when I set that up and organize that. So my website's coming up. So I would say, if you're interested in your health and to know this new paradigm, and if you've got a condition that you want to think about from this new perspective, then it'd be probably good thing to click on my site. And also, please go to the free new meds, free-new-medicine.com and download that book and leave a good donation to that guy, because that's just such a great guy for basically years of work to translate Dr. Hammer's work and put it in that format that's so easily accessible for every man and every woman there. So I know medical books. I bought some medical books myself, and you can easily look at the top side of £100 easy, right, for a medical book. So he's just given it out for donation. So, I would say give that guy some credit and get that book. Please do get that book and learn the 5 laws, and then start to understand your compass and protect your health, your family's health, your future generations' health. Get the knowledge going so that knowledge is like, it would just protect us.
Absolutely.
That's what it does. So.
Absolutely. I will leave the links below in the description so that people can follow your website and to leave a donation on the links below. I've noticed there's a slight delay when I'm speaking and when you're speaking, so I do apologize if the communication is a bit wrong timing. But Robert, no, thank you very, very much, and God bless you, and thank you.